Around the country, and for more, we now take time for one of our favorite segments on pregame, Air Check. We check in with experts from around the country. So we've got Paul Charchian from KFAN, fan in Minneapolis, Damon Amendolara from WQAM Radio in Miami, and Carl Dukes from the Ticket 97.5 ESPN Radio in Houston. We'll talk about the big issues of the day in sports, but first, guys, want to find out what's burning in your cities. I hate to use the Jim Rome phrase, so Carl, we'll just go with you first. What's the hottest topic in sports right now in your city?
Well, the big day today here in Houston. They signed, I'm talking about the Astros specifically, signed Mike Hampton. He was here 9 years ago. We know he's been injury prone. He had Tommy John surgery. He's had elbow issues. He finished the season strong last year in Atlanta, but he is now a Houston Astro as they try to solidify their starting rotation heading into next year's baseball season.
Damon, what are fans most excited or mad about in Miami right now?
Well, the story today, guys, is the Miami Dolphins actually control their own destiny in the AFC playoffs. If they win out, they win the AFC East, coming off a 1-15 to this with two very winnable games, San Francisco at home and then at Kansas City. Is it possible a 1-15 team actually wins the AFC East this year? That's what Dolphins fans are talking about today.
And Paul, I know on the news radio there, they're worried about the Senate race. What are they worried about in the sports world?
Well, the Williams story is a very big one here. And also, Tubby Smith has turned around a Gopher basketball program that has been dead in the water for 15 years. They're 7-0 right now for the first time this generation. And once again, Williams Arena, the barn, is becoming a very tough place to play here in Minnesota.
All right, so that's what's going on in each of your cities. Nationally, the Auburn situation is the breaking news that happened just about an hour ago. Tommy Tuberville fired. Damon, is that fair?
Yes, it is fair. Tommy Tuberville is the overripe banana of college football. It looked great for 9 years, and then you turned around and all of a sudden it was brown. It had become stale at Auburn. Fans and media had become really just impatient with what had happened. And while the 9-year run was great, and I think 100 out of 119 schools in America today would take 8+ wins for 8 or 9 years, it had become stale. Tuberville had to go.
You knew this was going to be an issue when they fired their offensive coordinator early in the season, and Tommy Tuberville was not going to be around for the long haul. I agree with Damon on this. It's a situation in which Auburn is looking around the SEC. They see Alabama turning their program around in a couple of years. They see what's going on at Florida and Georgia. They need to be relevant. It was time for a change.
No, you guys are completely wrong. This is ludicrous. You got to see, you have the same guy in place for 10 years. He wins Coach of the Year honors as recently as a few years ago. Programs crave, take it from somebody in Minnesota, programs crave continuity. It was just a couple of years ago that everybody said that Joe Pa had to go, right? And now look, we've had great Penn State teams for the last few years. This is a big mistake. Yes, this is a bad year. So what? If you can do it for 8 out of 10 years, you're a good coach. You don't wake up and suddenly be a bad coach. It's great to have the continuity of having the same good coach. You got to lump a few bad years and a few bad recruiting classes. Big deal. Look at it long term, Auburn. Big mistake.
Paul, you know what? Auburn fans are looking at Alabama and they're going, why not us? Why can't this be us? Why can't we be ranked #1 in the country? They're looking at Alabama and saying, we've got to make a change. This is bigger than just the job that he's done over the last 10 years or 9 years at Auburn. They see what everyone else is doing, specifically to Alabama in their state, and they're saying, we can't have this.
Well, they have a short memory because it was just 4 years ago that they went 13-0, and he beat Alabama 6 straight times. And in a rivalry of that magnitude, that is saying something. Carl,
and if they
what about Charlie? Hold on, guys, we got to move to Charlie Weis. We have to move on. Charlie Weis sticking around in South Bend. Carl, should he be?
No. Look, I don't understand how Charlie Weis is still the head coach. Put the blame on Kevin White, the former athletic director who signed him midway through his first season to a 10-year extension. Who gets a 10-year extension midway through their first season? Mac Brown doesn't get a 10-year extension through his first season. Blame Kevin White. Charlie Weis has not gotten the job done. This year, they barely survived Navy. They lose to Syracuse. They get embarrassed in a rivalry game against USC. How does he still have a job?
I'll tell you how he still has a job. It's the money that's involved. It costs so much to pay off the rest of his contract. Then you look around and you say, you know what? For whatever it's going to cost, and it's rumored to be an exorbitant amount, perhaps well over $10 million, you know, maybe we'll stick it out. His recruiting class coming into next year has been ranked the 7th best in the nation. I think they're doing what makes sense financially first and foremost, and then you hope he can turn it around.
We've heard that about his recruiting classes for years, and Auburn had to pay Tuberville about $6 million to can him. So, Damon, what's your take?
Guys, Carl, you're crazy. You know, it's hard to defend Charlie Weis after he said they were going to have a schematic advantage every Saturday, but Notre Dame's got to know who they are. They're recruiting not against Auburn and Florida and Georgia and USC. They're recruiting against Duke and Stanford. Who cares about their recruiting classes and where they're ranked? Get this. If you're recruiting 17 and 18-year-olds, they were 2 and 3 years old the last time Notre Dame won a bowl game. Right now, kids, it's irrelevant. Notre Dame, to us, is relevant. To kids coming through high school, it's irrelevant. Notre Dame is not Notre Dame of 20 years ago.
Guys, we talked about Plexico burst the last couple of days on the show, so we're switching NFL issues, but it's still a sticky one for the league. NFL suspending 6 players for violating the steroids and related substances policy. All 6 guys reportedly used a diuretic that can mask steroid use. Paul, is it fair for the league to suspend them 4 games each, finishing off the regular season?
I'm in Minnesota, and this is virtually a death knell for the Vikings, and this is a big mistake for the NFL, not because it affects my team, but because the players were at such a disadvantage. They were looking at the label of a product that was mislabeled. It's not fair to think that they're going to look at the label. They know what they can and can't put in their body, and nothing on that label says that I can't take this in.
Well, it says in the NFL policy, use at your own risk. It's very clear.
Absolutely it is, but you could have made it as reasonable, you could have made it as dedicated an opportunity as possible to look at the label and then take it and think you're perfectly okay. And sure, you're responsible for what goes in it. You're responsible to read the label. These guys did that. The label was wrong. The 4-game suspension is way out of bounds here. And one other thing, as long as the NFL does not test for human growth hormone, it's absurd to think that cheaters are going to take steroids and a masking agent when those are both detected. It's absurd to think that. So until they get their human growth hormone situation squared away, this is even more of a perversion of justice.
Carl, there was one Houston Texan on the list. What are fans down there saying about it?
Well, Brian Pittman, look, I know Brian Pittman, and I'm going to tell you, there's no way he's taking, enhancing drugs and trying to enhance his situation. He's been the long snapper here for the Texans since 2003. He took a diuretic. It was a doctor prescription. They went through all the necessary steps, and he gets suspended. I think it's a wrong move, and Paul, this is the first time you've been right all day. I agree with you on this because the NFL is suspending guys. There's a thin line here. This whole notion, you got to know what you're putting in your body. Go out to eat tonight. I guarantee you don't know what you're putting in your body.
You got 10 seconds left. You get the last word, Damon.
Come on, guys. I applaud the NFL. Keep these guys accountable. Yeah, Mark McGuire looks like Paul Bunyan when he takes steroids, and the Williams guys, they look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. But make these guys accountable for what they put in their bodies. Come on.
Paul from KFAN in Minneapolis, Damon from WQAM in Miami, and Carl from ESPN Radio in Houston. We are out of time. A great time with you guys tonight. We will talk to you soon on Air Check.
Take care.